12:05 in the afternoon here on WEJF 90.3 FM, the home of Helping Seniors of Brevard. I'm John Harper, and Kerry Fink. Kerry, of course, the host of Helping Seniors of Brevard and the executive director of the organization as well. And Kerry, it seems like everybody loves that song that we start the show with.
What do you want?
And
it's
music
classic.
of your life
Yeah.
is your life now.
That's it. It's good. It's good. It's good. Thank you, John Harper, and welcome, listener, to Helping Seniors Radio. It's our 12 o'clock noontime lunch gathering right around the radio at 90.3 FM, WEJF, every Wednesday. Special hello to those of you also joining us online at WEJF.net, and then those of you who may catch this later as a podcast, because we make sure that you get out on Apple iTunes and every place you get good podcasts. And so excited that we have a couple of real experts in the house today with us. When Joe Steckler, our president and founder, created the Helping Seniors organization, which is now in its 12th year of service here in Brevard County, we operate the county's senior information helpline. That's that free call at 321-473-7770. And I'll say that again so you get a moment to grab a pencil and maybe jot the number down. It's 321-473-7770. And Joe, when he put Helping Seniors together, he really wanted to make a difference for seniors. As you know, he built up the Brevard Alzheimer's Foundation, got them established with 3 great Joe's Clubs locations throughout Brevard County. And as he retired from that, he couldn't stay retired because he had discovered that he felt seniors had problems that go well beyond just the memory care issues that some seem to have to work through. And so what he wanted to do was create an organization that would educate and connect seniors to resources that are going to make a difference. And so with that in mind, Helping Seniors of Brevard came into focus and came into being. And with all these calls, it was happening that last year, Nancy Deerdorf, our operations director, 33 years registered nurse experience, and goes way back with Joe. In fact, had helped Joe when Joe was building those Joe's Clubs, as a matter of fact, on his board of directors. And so Nancy took 5,384 calls, most of which, I think she said it was somewhere close to 60%, actually had to do with senior housing challenges. And so we have 2 folks with us on the radio today that are really going to help us as we're going to talk about that, and we'll talk about a few other things. But first, let me introduce to you direct here in the studio none other than Traci Graf, who is a registered nurse, and she's the owner of Avid Home Care. How are you, Traci?
I'm good. Thanks for being here.
And then also joining us by telephone is none other than longtime friend. She has been a friend of the Helping Seniors organization going way back, and we joke to this day about how she had to really sit down and school Joe on the merits of what she is really truly an expert in. We're talking about reverse mortgages, and so almost by definition then we were talking about, at least in my opinion, the county's expert on that, Barbara McIntyre with Mutual of Omaha Reverse. Hey, Barb, how are you?
Hey there, I'm good, Kerry. How are you? Hi, Traci.
Hi,
I'm
Barb.
glad to be here today.
How you doing?
We are so glad that you're here, and we titled the show Senior Homelessness. And interestingly enough, maybe we'll kind of kick off because Traci had written an article that's coming out. It's going to be out in the March edition of the Helping Seniors newsletter, which is in Senior Scene magazine center section. And you actually kind of brought the topic to the forefront, although it has absolutely been at the forefront all along. Talk a little bit about some of the things that we'll learn about in the article when it comes out in that March Senior Scene.
Well, I was a little frustrated when I did the research for that article because, at least from what I could find, there aren't any statistics that break out people by age group. They do break out children and adults, but they don't break out any age difference in adults when you're looking up the statistics in our county for homelessness.
Right.
I think it's something that is really scary for the people who are on fixed incomes, especially older people who are, truly cannot take a hit to their rent or their lot rent or their mortgage or their insurance or anything. They're living that tight.
Right.
And what happens when that happens? I mean, if they don't have family to move in with, or they don't have support from somewhere, I don't think people are really thinking about that age group when we talk about what is going to happen to them. I mean, it's really concerning, I think.
Yeah, it's a complicated story. I was going to say, Barb, as you know, because you've heard Nancy talk a little bit about this too, that it's really the heartbreaking story, and we get these calls all the time. Somebody who has faithfully paid their rent, maybe for a dozen years wherever they live, suddenly that place was sold to a new owner. And it's not like the new owner necessarily is trying to be evil. It's just they paid a whole different number for the place, and their costs are just different. So their answer is, well, we got to charge the people who rent from us more. And so the rent goes up, from $800 to $1,200. Doesn't seem like a big increase, $400 a month. But if you're living on Social Security or fixed income, and that's all you have in the world, it makes you homeless, Barb.
I know, it's a frightening thought, and it's happening all the time. And like you said, you can't, the owner of the maybe apartment, his cost or her costs are going up with taxes and insurance, and so they're trying to stay afloat, paying their mortgage payment. But that doesn't help the senior who is, now really up against it, because where do you go? I often talk to folks about getting together with other people and home sharing, putting their monies together and trying to share expenses to try and help keep that from happening. But that's a hard, difficult thing to do as well, because if you don't know someone, how do you get to know someone so you can feel safe? Having them, in your home or you in theirs. But I think we're going to have to start thinking in terms of things like that, so that the elders have more options, because right now it's just getting worse all the time.
Yeah, and you see them building big, huge new apartment complexes around our areas. And I mean, I know the one near me is one bedroom is $1,200. That is not affordable for someone over 80 years old.
No, and this is really the problem. And Barb is getting really close to something we're going to spend some more time talking about, because this is something that Nancy has already identified and is actually on a very simple as she can basis doing just that, about matching people. But I wanted to talk a little bit about something, because I sit with a group called the Brevard Commission on Aging. It's actually a group that for many years, Joe, back in the Brevard Alzheimer's days, led. It is the official, quote, body of the Brevard County Commissioners, so they are supposed to hear our plea on behalf of seniors. And, one of the things that you mentioned, I think is kind of important, Traci. You said that when you're looking at these housing statistics, yeah, they'll tell you how many kids there are, but they won't tell you how many seniors there are. And one of the things that we always talk about is we explain why helping seniors is needed as a charity. Again, we're a 501c3 charity. We have no reason to exist other than to try to make life better for seniors and their families here in Brevard County. But one of the points that I wanted to make was, a lot of times people say, well, why do we need a charity that helps seniors? And I said, well, look, here we are. We're in Brevard County. We love our kids, and we love them so much that collectively we voted that we want to pay an extra half-cent sales tax every time we go to the store, because we love our kids so much. And that's wonderful. But we have less kids under 18 than we have seniors over 65 in our county.
Right.
So the question really is, are we doing enough for seniors? But here's the point I wanted to get to about Brevard Commission on Aging. They have identified this in their advocacy. Like, there's a subcommittee that works on advocacy. What are the things that we need to really kind of bombard the Brevard commissioners that they need to wake up to? And it was interesting, the discussion we had, because most of the time when somebody has trouble paying their rent or paying their mortgage, we cast aspersions on them. We say, oh, you didn't manage your money correctly. Oh, you're just being lazy. You need to go get another job. That's just how we do with people. But for the senior group, and this is what we talked about, that's not fair. They have paid all their taxes all these years. They have been the ones who have made it possible for all the other things to happen. And then when they're in a position that they need some help, you know, now it's like, oh, well, you just have to go get a second job. I mean, there was the heartbreaking story, Barb, I know you're familiar with that. Traci, I think you are too, that we were able to actually, thank God, make a difference for. There was an 87-year-old retired vet who, through no fault of his own, found himself in just that situation. The new owner needed a different rent situation. There's no way the guy could make it work. So what does he do? 87 years old, served our country. Now he's out on the street at Christmas time.
Yes.
At Christmas time.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I felt sick when Nancy called me about that.
And so Nancy did an all-out, she called in every resource we could think of, and there was just nothing out there. So this poor guy stayed in his car, 87, for several weeks. And thank God, a couple of folks stepped up anonymously and said, we can't stand this. This is heartbreaking. We're going to at least pay a hotel for him so he can at least spend through Christmas, you know, with a shower, you know, and with heat and with all the things that, you know, a person really does need. And she was able to make that difference for this gentleman. But further, through really kind of an exhausting effort, did exactly, Barb, what you were talking about, found somebody who needed extra help for their overhead, and it matched up. This guy doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, you know, all those things, but he has a couple of medical things, so he has to have, for example, he had to have his own restroom. I mean, there was a few things that were in there. Somehow, thank God, you know, Nancy was able to work out. And so that was a story of how it worked out. But these are stories that come in by the dozens, guys.
And I don't.
Yeah,
I don't think.
I'm sorry, Traci. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say, I don't think it's that we're saying that younger people and children are less important, because we're not saying that at all.
Right.
I don't think any child should be homeless. My God.
Amen.
But the older folks really do have a harder time. They have a harder time with pretty much everything. So including change, including, you know, maybe new social situations. There's all sorts of things that go along with someone who's lived independently for, you know, 80 or more years. So they have more medical issues, and you know, we're already talking about an exhausted medical system. Well, if there's more old people out on the street, guess who's going to take that hit? The hospitals are going to be more overwhelmed because they're going to exhaust the medical system.
Wow.
Right.
They have nowhere else to go.
It's definitely going to be a bad situation if it's allowed to continue without any assistance. Again, I think, you know, if Nancy is trying to find a way to put people together, you know, for home sharing or that type of thing, I've always asked people if do they go to a church? Are they part of a senior center? Do they, you know, who do they know? Is there, you know, because I've just found in my own experience many years ago, my mother, she didn't need any help, but we were both kind of on our own, and we each owned our own home. We were very fortunate. And I said, you know what, how about I move in? We're together all the time. And so that's what I did. I moved in with my mom, and it wasn't because she needed it. It's because we just chose to live that way. And then I met a really wonderful man and later got married. And I always said that Mom married with Bob and I, that we married, the three of us. So the three of us lived together. And the reality of that was the amount of money we were able to save. You know, because we just split everything up three ways, and it was just a huge savings, as well as we weren't lonely. So if there's some way that we can start to, you know, find a way to put people together to try to bridge that gap, I don't know what other solutions are out there, because, like we said, even the new senior living that's being constructed is still expensive.
It's expensive, and people still are, you know, in some ways they're misled on what those places can do for them. And they get there, and then, you know, now they need more help. It's going to cost more money. And it's just, you know, they're not happy. Some of them, it's great. Some of them thrive in assisted living, you know. But I was talking to Kerry right before I came in, and I do have permission from my dad to talk about his situation. Yeah. But I think it's a good example of someone who we would never really expect to be in that kind of situation where his income is much lower than what it costs to live. And, you know, he's 80 years old right now. Him and his wife are both 80. They have a little condo or townhouse down by the beach. And they like it there. But even my dad just said to me on the phone, you know, it's a 2-bedroom. We rarely have guests. We don't really need a 2-bedroom at this point. But what I'm concerned about, here's my dad, and a retired attorney, you know, educated, worked his whole life. In fact, he just stopped really working as a lawyer only a year or two ago. So, you know, he sold his practice, and he gets a monthly payment for that practice. But that payment will not last till the end of his life. He's going to outlive that.
Wow.
So
yeah,
we
that's the
know
scary part.
It is. So you know, you and he's not, I know he's not the only one like this, but you know, his cost of living right now, where he's living, what he drives, you know, all these things are basic for him and his wife, but they are, you know, they fit with their income right now. But when that payment goes away, you know, I've said to him, Dad, we're going to have a problem. I mean, you're not going to be able to afford to stay here. And, you know, what I very honestly keep pushing for is that we build them a tiny house on the back of my property. You know, or a small container home that's a 1-bedroom, you know, real nice. I mean, they're really nice the way they build them.
Sure.
And we have an acre property. We could put them all the way in the back, and we wouldn't even know they were there.
You know,
right, and I think we're going to start seeing that, you know.
Yeah, I think we have to start
generational living.
It would be really nice if maybe some, I don't know, developers or investors or somebody would buy up several mobile homes in some of the parks and do the house sharing, like Barbara's saying.
Well, you know what you guys are talking about, and I think it's a point that's worth pointing out. You know, in the case that where Barb was talking about, you know, getting together with her mom, and just like you're talking about, trying to get ahead of it and figure out solutions for your dad, and so on and so forth. You know, that's a sign, I think, of a good family situation where you have kids who are looking after what's going on. But I can also tell you that we get lots of calls where the family dynamics are awful. But there's also those cases where it's not a question of family dynamics. The person has literally outlived everyone else, and they are literally on their own. So all these, and I guess one of the things that I want us to really get into as we try to just work our way through the conversation, part of the question is, it doesn't seem like there's just a magic bullet. You do this and everything is okay. It does seem like it's a combination of everybody focusing on the problem and doing whatever they can to make a difference. That's certainly our approach at helping seniors. We're going to try to do the best we can with every call that comes in on that senior information helpline. But one of the points that I really wanted to continue to harp on for a minute, if you guys will let me, is that in that Brevard Commission on Aging meeting this past time, one of the things that we talked about is that it's so important we get the awareness out there, because just like Traci, you were saying at the beginning, you know, there aren't the statistics on the number of seniors that are out there. And so typically, like we had this conversation came up, so people say, oh, well, the answer is, well, more low-income housing. And then, you know, that comes up with all these problems that people say, well, those people should get a job, and they're just very judgmental, and all of that is wrong. You know?
Those people think $1,200 a month is low-income housing.
Yeah, it's crazy. But here's my point. So even when we talk about senior housing, like let's say, you know, our Brevard County government or some of the city governments, you know, got some funds and said, hey, here's something we can do, and they got that project rolling, it's going to be a couple of years before anything is ready. And if you talk to Nancy, the first thing she'll tell a caller when they call in about a housing challenge, she said, right now, when we hang up, I want you to call and get on the list for for senior housing. So there's a wait list. It's a couple of years, but at least go ahead right now, get your name on the list, and every day we're clicking closer to you getting a call back about that.
What does that entail for them? If they get the call and they're accepted, where do they go?
Well, so you know, we do have several low-income housing opportunities here. They're full and with a waiting list for a couple of years. But basically, Nancy's advice or wisdom that she tries to share with callers is, look, put your name on the list. When they call you, because it could be 2 years down the road, you may be able to say pass because I've got it all worked out. But if you don't, it could be the lifesaver. And I guess, as Nancy has explained it, one of the benefits of that is then your rent is kind of stabilized, so it's not going to be a problem on that fixed income. Okay. Now, it's not a perfect situation, but at least if you're on the list, you're moving towards, a plausible solution. And this is really what the problem seems to be. Because like you said, the average, I think I read, this was a year or two ago, the average 2-bedroom now is running $1,400 plus in Brevard County. And if you're getting a Social Security check that's $800 or $900,
that's just not going to work.
You're behind to start with.
I really think, honestly, and myself included in some ways, we really don't understand what that means. They only get $800 or $900. Okay, so that's all they get.
Yeah.
That's it. There is nothing else. There is no supplemental income. They're too old or disabled or whatever to make a supplemental income. And, I say let's hand somebody in power $800-900 a month and see how they make out.
Well, that's really the point that you're getting at. And what we talked about, again, is we've got to get people to realize there is one such thing as okay, you don't want to take a job, you don't want to do this, but and literally for some seniors that could be an option. We do a lot of work together with Career Source Brevard. Our friend over there, Lois Thomas, is very dedicated. They do a thing called Back to Work 50 Plus, which is an AARP program, and what they're trying to do with that is make sure that seniors have not only job opportunities that would be appropriate for them, but they will actually go out and help them, how do you apply? Maybe somebody hasn't tried to be in the workforce for a while, so they don't understand that everything is an online application. It's not the old world where you send a resume in the mail. So they're trying to do everything that they can with that, but that's only appropriate for a certain percentage, right?
Right, yes. And because we can talk about 55, 60, 70 even being somewhat computer literate, but boy, you get to someone who's in their 80s, it just isn't a possibility. Not to mention, even standing and being a greeter at Walmart is a challenge for people that are older.
Well, I will say that I would be glad to hire anyone over 50, which is shocking to me that we're even talking about that. Like, someone over 50 isn't capable of working. I'm 52. I plan on working as a nurse till I die in some form or another. Right. So I don't understand that whole thought process. I'm having a hard time figuring out that I'm in that category now. Yeah. But we do have people who work for us that are over 50, that are over 60. I think I have one lady who's in her early 70s. She's in great shape.
We're going to come back and talk some more about that. We're going to take our mid-show break, but we're having this conversation about senior homelessness, and we'll be back with the second half of Helping Seniors Radio just around the corner on 90.3 FM WEJF.
12:32 right now here on 90.3 FM. We continue with Helping Seniors of Brevard. Once again, your host, Kerry Fink.
Well, thank you, John Harper. It's good to be back for the second half of our lunchtime gathering every Wednesday right here on 90.3 FM Radio WEJF, and hello online at WEJF.net as well, and those who catch this as a podcast later. On behalf of our president and founder, Joe Steckler, we are in the middle of an entertaining and hopefully informative discussion about the challenge of senior homelessness. And our guest today is Barb McIntyre, who is a long time friend of the Helping Seniors organization. She is an expert in reverse mortgages. And before we get too much farther into the show, we're going to ask her why that can be a solution sometimes for seniors who are maybe approaching the challenges of running out of money or becoming homeless. So welcome back, Barb.
Well, thank you. I, obviously the reverse mortgage only is attached to a piece of property. So unfortunately, if someone has already gotten to the situation where they have not been able to keep their home and now they're renting and they're running out of money, the reverse mortgage would not be a good fit. But what we're finding now is everybody is dealing with the inflation that's going on and just higher costs of everything. And some of those folks may have a mortgage payment. So the reverse mortgage is a perfect way to use equity in the home to get rid of debt that's causing them to have to write a check every month for principal and interest on a mortgage, credit card debt. Lots of seniors are finding themselves living off credit cards. That becomes such a big burden. So that's where the reverse mortgage would come into play. And it's a very good tool, and it's a resource that everyone should know is available to them, at least to look into and find out if it's a possible fit. And that's what I do. I love to give information about that product.
Yeah, we're talking with Barbara McIntyre, who works with Mutual of Omaha Reverse. And one of the things, Barb, that I was going to say is I know we've done a lot of different radio shows along the way where we've talked about some different innovative uses of a reverse mortgage. Number one, somebody may be struggling to keep up their payments on the house, and so now is house insecure, maybe going to lose the house because they can't do that. Whereas potentially by sitting down and looking at a reverse mortgage might be able to not only resolve that, but like you said, maybe even have it be where they don't have to try to come up with that monthly payment because the reverse mortgage proceeds could help wipe that out. And then secondly, I remember we've talked about even the options of using a reverse mortgage to purchase another home, which might be a solution if you have a relative who's facing some situations or something like that.
Right, that's absolutely true. You can, as long as the person who has the mortgage lives in the home as their primary residence, then they can absolutely use a reverse mortgage to purchase that home. So again, anything that allows the homeowner to get rid of any debt, the requirement to make payments on debt. Obviously, when you have a reverse mortgage, you still have a debt.
Right.
But the thing about reverse mortgages is you don't have to worry about that debt until you no longer live in your home. And so for all practical purposes, you can just forget about it. Live your life, and when you move out of your home, then the home is what's going to be responsible for repayment. So it's really a way to live securely, to not have to worry. The statistics are that more people are worried about running out of money in their lifetime than they even are dying. Wow. That's how big a stressor it is. Definitely. To think, oh my goodness, I'm going to live too long and my money's going to be gone. So, I think it's always good to understand that the reverse mortgage is not something anyone should fear. They should just find out about it. It doesn't work for everyone, but when it does work, it can really be a valuable solution.
Yeah. Barb McIntyre with Mutual of Omaha Reverse. Barb, if somebody, I know you have always been very generous. We've done so many TV shows, radio shows over the year where you really get into the benefits and how this can really be a game changer for people to take a look at least consider as part of proper financial planning for your senior years. How do they get in touch with you?
Very easily. They just pick up the phone and call 321-259-7880. And I'll answer it, and then I will get a minimal amount of information and be able to tell them if the reverse could be a solution for them. Yeah,
you have always been so generous with your time about that. And that's one of the things I love about the people that are connected with helping seniors is everybody is really always keeping in mind what's best for the senior. If there's a good fit and it's good business, it's going to make sense. And if it's not, let's keep looking for a solution that works. And that's what it takes to make it go for seniors. And similarly with Traci Graf, who's in the studio with us also today, she's a registered nurse. She's the owner of Avid Home Care Services. We were talking during the break that at least for a certain segment of the population who feels like maybe getting some employment might be a solution. Traci, you're a good solution. You were telling me about some programs that you have access to that can really make a difference for seniors who say, hey, I could work a little bit, and what would that look like?
Well, I think, one thing is obviously we're different than other agencies with this kind of stuff. We will we will talk to them and try to find a good fit for them, because if I can find a good fit for a good client and they take on that assignment altogether, that helps me tremendously. And so we were saying this group, this over 50 group, which I'm still blown away by, because I'm in that group. So I'm a little, everyone here is in that group. Yes, I know.
ARP calls us seniors at 50, whether
Don't
we
start
like it
with
or
the
not.
AARP thing.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
husband is all over me that I'm eligible to get it now, and we should get this. I'm like, please. But I mean, I have employees who are certainly over 50. I have some that are in their 60s, and I have one who's in her early 70s.
Wow.
You know, and they're still relatively active people. We have one gentleman who's in his, I think, late 60s, mid 60s maybe, and he only really has one assignment with one older lady, and he drives her to her things, her shopping, her hair appointment, her nail salon, and he's her regular guy. And we don't really ask him to do much more than that. But some of them can take, you know, people walk in all the time with all different backgrounds. And especially when you're talking about some of the older staff, they may not have access to certificates that they once had, or training, proof of training that they had done this course, you know, 10, 20 years ago in New York. They don't have the paperwork. So I think to myself, you know, what do I do with them? Or people who come in and say, you know, I've taken care of both my parents till they died. I've been a caregiver, you know, for years. I want to give them work. I want it to be a win-win for us and them. So ACA, who is the people who manage all of healthcare, regulate, whatever you want to call it, they're in charge. But they have given all agencies like mine an option that, say someone comes in like that, where they have home health aid training or experience, but they don't have anything to show proof of training. So what would happen is, if I didn't have them take this test and ACA came in, they would say I had a mismatch of staffing. It's an inappropriate mismatch of staffing. If I had them for, say, seeing somebody who they were having to help in and out of a car, in or out of a chair, in or out of a shower, because that cannot be done by a companion. Per ACA law. I will add in that no one's watching the companion services, because they're not watched by ACA. So those people are many times doing all sorts of stuff that are way out of their scope of practice.
Right.
That's enough on. I'll get off my soapbox on that subject. But you know. We give them the test. It's like an, 100-question test. I've read it. It's mostly common sense with a little bit of medical, you know, how to maneuver people right and things like that. What choices would you make in these situations? So if they pass the test, and I keep the test on file, if ACA comes to see me, which I guess eventually someday they will, and they look at my staffing, and, you know, they look at the staff, and then they look at the client, and they see that the client needs hands-on care. They're going to go to look at the training that I have on file for that employee. If I don't have a certificate of completion of a program or something, but I do have the ACA test, I'm good.
So anyway, that could be, I didn't realize that was an employment possibility that somebody might want to look into. What if somebody wanted to reach you at Traci Graf at Avid Home Care and said, I'm interested in learning more of what you were just talking about, how would they reach you?
You can call us at 321-392-3400. Is that? I've given the wrong number a couple times here. It's crazy, isn't it? I think it's 3400.
Well,
we'll confirm that before the end of the show.
I can tell you, because when I look us up in the Helping Seniors Senior Services Directory, which is in fact a great place to go to find names and phone numbers of people who matter, the number that we have listed there for you, Traci Graf, is 321. It is 392-3400.
That's it.
Yeah. So there you go. So
That's right.
So you said
I don't
right.
call my office very often.
I hear you.
But I did say to you, you know, on the break that, I mean, working with us could really be very good for somebody in that age group. I mean, you get personal satisfaction out of what you're doing because you're caring for people. We certainly can work around, flexible schedules.
Right.
I have one lady who works for me who used to be my LPN when I was at Health First Home Care. She's retired, and she works for me, and she says, I will only work Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's it. Don't ask me to do anything else. She has one client. And we don't push her boundaries. We don't bother her. But I know she takes excellent care of that client.
Well, I like the way that it's a solution that fits with people's schedules and things like that. So again, as we kind of jump back to the main topic of senior homelessness, we're talking about that there's really not a single answer. For some people, it could be maybe a reverse mortgage because they own their home, gives them a path. Some people say, well, I might be able to do some work. I can't do 40 hours a week. I can't do maybe what I used to do when I was in the full work mode. But maybe there's an option, for example, with Avid Home Care. And we've talked about this many times on the air, that our friends at Career Source Brevard, with locations all throughout the county, they really specialize and enjoy helping get folks back into the workplace if that's an option. Now, let's take those kind of things off of the table for a minute and spend a few more minutes on what else can we do. Because again, like we talked about, it's not any one particular solution is going to be appropriate for everybody. Some people really need to look at family connections and see what's possible. I know I have heard Joe Steckler, our president and founder, counsel people, don't move to Florida. He'll get a call. Somebody's up in, I'm just going to make this up and say Chicago. So they really are tired of Chicago winters and want to come down and enjoy the nice sunshine in Florida. And so the first thing that they say is, well, how do I get housing vouchers? How do I get food vouchers? How do I get all these things that they're used to with however it works up there in Illinois? And the reality is that Joe will have to, or Nancy will have to, explain to them, this isn't that same state. This is a different kind of state. So if you are coming and you're just expecting to live off of Social Security, you're probably better to stay in the state where you paid all your taxes anyway, because they're set up for those programs. And so it's a real realistic point. I was at a session yesterday with the Space Coast Florida State Guardians Association, where the group that actually presented was a group called Aged, and what they do is they do special trust funds, pooled trust funds, and they're particularly adept at working. The reason they were talking is because they help guardians who are trying to manage this same financial process for their senior wards. Well, it's not always seniors, but oftentimes it is, and trying to help them move through the money correctly. And as an example, the lady who was leading this seminar was giving a conversation that, as an example, said here's a 78-year-old gentleman who can't get a knee replacement or a hip, I think it was a hip replacement that they desperately needed. He had $14,000 in savings, and at the rate that he was overspending because what he was taking in was less than what it was costing him every month, he was going to be out of money in less than 2 years. Well, they were able to do something to set him up with a qualified income trust, and I could be getting all this twisted, but the point of the story is that through proper, legal, correct positioning, they were able to get him in a situation where not only was he able to get his Medicare premium returned to him in his Social Security check, he did not have to pay the deductibles for his medical care, and because of that, it actually, by the time the dust settled, put him $50 a month to the good instead of running out $600 a month, and he was able to get his hip replaced. So the point is, don't discount the value of experts in this. If you go to a qualified legal, we talk about this all the time. Bill Johnson is an elder law attorney who's part of the Helping Seniors Network, and we have so many fine elder law attorneys who are in the network, but any one of them will tell you there's probably ways to do things correctly that could even help you make a difference where you thought there was no way through. That's another option. The last option is the one that is close to hand, because even if we said, our Brevard government leaders would drop every dollar in the world to construct senior housing, it's still not going to be ready for a period of time, and we're dealing with people who are homeless today. And so that comes back to the thing, Barb McIntyre, that you kind of opened the show with, which is that there is a difference between having a situation with being able to fund a home and stay in it independently, as opposed to you need assisted living or some other levels of help. So one of the solutions that has really been coming to the table an awful lot is putting together these group homes, which that way several seniors can roommate together and share the cost. And Barb, I think that's a lot what you were talking about.
Right. I recommend that all the time when I'm talking to someone who's just saying, I just really, I can't make ends meet. And so my question is always, do you belong to a church? Do you, who are your friends? Who are, because there's always someone out there with a similar situation trying to make ends meet. And, I guess my experience that I shared earlier with generational living, I just think that as time goes on, we're going to have to move in that direction. I would like to think that everybody cares about their parents and their children. And so, if we start to plan, and we always talk about it's all about a plan. It's all about planning ahead. And so thinking about putting people or families together to share expenses, I just think it's probably the only solution that I can think of today.
Right, and
that can help.
It's one that, interestingly enough, we've had the privilege of working with a lady whose name is Vinnie Richardson. She is a person that is, she works with a group called the Housing Foundation of America. She has her own ministry called Christian Housing Ministry, and she's HUD certified. So she likes to sit down and talk with people who are having a challenge with everything from, maybe they're facing eviction because they're renters, and a lot of times some landlord counseling can actually make a difference where they sit down and kind of figure out how to bridge a gap. But the same for people who are facing foreclosure. There are some tools and techniques that can work, and so she always says good to find out early on and to get ahead of that curve. So here again, the Helping Seniors organization itself, we've made this a priority in our own community to try to make sure that we are talking with the local governments, applying for grants where they're possible, because what we see is we have to try to take a front role in making sure seniors and this senior housing is working, and it's a person at a time. There's just no magic solution. So we got to look at each situation on its own.
All right.
So with that, I wanted to ask, do you, Barb McIntyre, have any closing comments? I mean, I think half of it today, if we reach our goal, half of it is just getting people to start thinking about the problem, right?
Right. That's would be my biggest advice is, we know we're all going to get older, and, we also know that we're living longer than ever before. And if you are paying attention at all, the cost of everything isn't coming down. It's continuing to go up. So we need to look to the future. We plan for everything else in our life. We've got to go ahead and start thinking, where do I want to live? Where do I want to age? Do I want to age in place? Do I, how can I do that? Do I need to consider a reverse mortgage so that I can afford to pay for home health services as I need them, get rid of debt so that I can keep more of my money working for me? Or is assisted living the way I'm going to go, at which case you wouldn't do a reverse mortgage. You'd be planning to sell your home. But assisted living can be very expensive. And then, the other thing is reaching out to your friends because they're all facing the same issues. And I think talking about it with your friends and family is very important. And I think a lot of people just keep it to themselves until they're in real dire straits. And I think if they talk to their friends, call Helping Seniors, there's resources. You just have to know how to get to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So well said. So, Barb McIntyre, one more time, if somebody has a question about reverse mortgages, or are there some options or things that they might not have thought about? So again, we're talking with Barbara McIntyre, who is with Mutual of Omaha Reverse. How do they get in touch with you?
They just pick up the phone and call 321-259-7880.
Okay, and so same question for you, Traci Graf. We were talking about different things that are possible. I know you've got the article coming out in Senior Scene magazine in March called Senior Homelessness, where you were trying your best to find data about the seniors, and you found that was a difficult process. But, even if somebody is interested, maybe they need help at home, and you're a good resource for that. Or perhaps, as we talked about, maybe somebody says, I hadn't really thought about this. Because, to be honest, until you and I were speaking in the break, I thought literally the only option was if you were like a medical professional to work with you. But talk a little bit and give that phone number.
321-392-3400. You can call and talk to my son Jeff. He's the scheduler, and he'll schedule an interview for you to come in. Mm-hmm. You do have to have active CPR. You do have to have, which if you don't, we can help you get it.
Yeah.
You will have to be subjected to fingerprints and have them submitted, and you cannot have a criminal background.
Okay.
You need to have a driver's license.
Right.
And, car insurance. That's pretty much it.
Wow. And then you can help actually get them set up in kind of a very flexible work kind of situation that could maybe make a difference.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm again still shocked to hear that people over 50 are having trouble getting, because I'd hire all of them. I mean, we have clients going on waiting lists.
Yeah.
That are 2 and 3 weeks long. I have one who put on a waiting list in December. I still haven't called her.
Yeah.
Because I don't have anybody to staff it.
Yeah.
So I give them all the option. If they call and that's what they say, we give them the option. If we can't staff it right now, you can either go to another agency or you can wait and we'll get back to you. And they're choosing to wait, so that's a huge compliment to us. But
yeah.
it's something that constantly weighs on our minds. My son and I constantly.
Yeah. Well, this is why I love and appreciate you guys being here with us on the radio. I'm talking about Barbara McIntyre with Mutual of Omaha Reverse, and also Traci Graf, who's the owner of Avid Home Care, because both of you guys have that. We got to do the right thing for seniors. We got to find solutions. We got to find a way through the problem, and you're not afraid to devote your time and energy to make that happen. That's kind of been the spirit of helping seniors. We're a tiny 501c3 organization that Joe Steckler founded years. Literally, we're now into our 12th year of service, and really. Looking forward to the things that are coming up, because there are several exciting things. You're going to be hearing more. In fact, we're going to end up doing a radio show all about the new Helping Seniors Resource Center that is coming very, very soon, and some of the things that's going to allow us to do in our mission to educate, inform, and connect seniors and their families to resources. And then on top of it, we get the fun stuff we get to talk about. It's our fundraiser, because as a charity, we can't go anywhere if people don't fund us. And so two of the main things, well, really the main thing that has kept us going is the Helping Seniors Car Raffle fundraiser. So we're back in action with that. The date you want to keep in mind for that is Saturday, October 7th, 2023. Mark Pylock has kindly invited us back to his amazing American Muscle Car Museum. Barb, you've been there. You know what it's like.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing, and you have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
You can't imagine that many beautiful cars, old and all in one place. It's just an amazing place.
Yeah, and amazingly presented, too, because every car, it's like you feel like you could just eat off of the hood, or they're just
unbelievable.
They're so well maintained. And your ticket, when you get your Helping Seniors Car Raffle ticket, is admit one to the car show that night when we do the grand drawing. But somebody that night is also going to go home with a new car, either a Dodge Challenger, a Chevrolet Camaro like our winner took last year, a Kia Sportage like our winner did the year before. They could take a Mazda Miata convertible, or since AJ is also opening up a Mitsubishi dealership this year, we've added a Mitsubishi Outlander to the list of cars as well. So lots of cars to choose from, but you got to get a ticket. It's finally online. HelpingSeniorsCarRaffle.com. Well, that's the time we have for today. Look forward to seeing you next week on the Helping Seniors radio show. See you then.